Hey, what's going on, WBSE? Tonight, I get to sit down with Brendan Coyle, Master Distiller at High West Distillery. We're going to talk all about science, about distilling. We're going to sip on some of their offerings, talk about some cocktails, and we're just going to talk everything about whiskey in High West. Brendan, welcome to WBSE, the Whiskey Network.
Thanks so much. Good to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So we'll get right into it. First off, I want to raise my glass, as we always do. I'm drinking Midwinter's Night Dram 7.2 and say cheers.
Cheers.
So you started off as a beer guy. You started brewing beer. Something got into you and you flew over to Scotland and you studied at the University of Edinburgh to become a distiller. Can you tell us?
Yeah, Harriet Watt University.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you tell us how that all came about?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think like many in the industry, I got started home brewing in my kitchen, right? And I just got really into it, working with the art behind it, reading up on the science, putting two and two together. And I decided I want to kind of get into the industry. Started off in an apprenticeship in the brewing industry down in Salt Lake City at Red Rock Brewing Company. That lasted, 4 or 5 years, and decided I really wanted to take it to the next level. So I went overseas, completed a master's in brewing and distilling sciences at Harriet Watt, which is kind of the main English-speaking school for what we do out there overseas. Came back, a little bit of consulting, and then jumped into the distilling industry with High West, really as a managing partner from day one as master distiller. That was back in 2007. So it's been a fun ride, kind of building up the High West name. And then, as a lot of people probably know, we recently sold High West to Constellation Brands, and I still stay on in Utah, right at the distillery here. And they're all about, really, keeping the soul and the life and the flavor profile and everything behind High West. So it's been a fun time.
All right. The distilling process. What's your favorite part about it?
I kind of mentioned it before. I like that blend of art and science, right? So you get to use so many interesting sciences, from microbiology and the fermentation to chemical engineering, in the actual distillation process. You get to blend all these different sciences together through the entire process and make a completely natural and fairly unique product that brings people together and puts smiles on everyone's faces. So that's the coolest thing, really, is blending all the sciences together for me.
Absolutely. So High West Distillery is based in Park City, Utah. What does the environment there, the altitude, how does that affect the distillery process, the aging process?
Yeah, so it's actually a little less elevation dependent and more humidity dependent. Utah is a pretty dry state. We're about the second driest in humidity state in the US, I believe, second or third. And that plays a bigger role than the elevation, actually, from what we've seen in our studies. So it changes that evaporation rate, the ratio between the ethanol and the water coming out of the cask. And so very dry area, you're going to have more water, a higher rate of water evaporation to hit that equilibrium. And so you tend to drive higher alcohols over time.
Okay. Things that you learned over in Scotland, does any of that come back to what you're doing over at High West?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're a batch distillery. We focus probably more on batch distillation than column still distillation in the school. But we like pot stills. We like batch distillation for our own process within High West. It gives you a pretty broad, rich, pretty large flavor profile to work with, especially when you're working with it in blending. When you're doing blending with batch pot stills and column stills as well. So it gives us a lot of versatility and really my schooling overseas was the entire process, right, from grain to glass. And so you have a lot of overlap between beer fermentations, wine fermentations, whiskey fermentations. You have a lot of overlap. You get to play back and forth. And I like to call it cross-pollination. You learn a lot in one area, and you can apply that in different parts to other areas and make some pretty unique flavor profiles.
All right. So in 2010, you were named the Pioneer of the Year. In 2016, you were named the Distillery of the Year. What does all that mean to you? I mean, you've come a long way, all the way up to now.
Really what that means to me is it's great to see that not only just the whiskey industry, but the whiskey consumer is evolving. They're getting more knowledgeable. They're expanding kind of, out what's possible for their favorite drink. And I say that because High West is not a normal distillery, or at least it wasn't a normal distillery when we put it together, back in 2007, 2008. We do really two different things. We both source and we produce. So, and then in the end, we take, whether we're sourcing that whiskey, whether we're producing that whiskey on our own pot stills at our own distillery, we take all those different component whiskeys, and that makes its way up into kind of a unique and usually fairly complex blended final product is most of what we do. And that was a kind of a stretch for the American whiskey consumer back in the day. I got to admit it. It took a little while and a lot of education, for people to understand what we were doing. So to have, such a major publication like that call us out as Pioneer and Distillery of the Year, I mean, that's really, to me, it says that the consumer and the industry is just really kind of broadening their horizons and looking outside of the box, really.
Right on. So one of your most sought after bottles, kind of your flagship, as you and I discussed earlier, a Midwinter's Night Dram. You finish it in, what is it, French and port barrels?
French oak port barrels. So
okay.
It's 1 barrel finishing. It's a French oak port barrels.
Okay.
Those port barrels, they kind of change on a seasonal basis where we pull those from. We nose every single barrel that comes into the distillery. So we accept or reject it based off of the aroma of that port that was aged in that French oak barrel. But since the winery schedule is different than the distillery schedule, it's really tough to get the exact same thing every year. So we migrate around, but we do have kind of a preferred ratio of ruby to tawny port barrels that we like to finish in. And so that finishes for anywhere for at least a year, but sometimes we blend in 2-year and sometimes even 3-year-old Midwinter Night's Dram finished in port wine barrels to get the balance of, the port character, the tannins, the mouth drawing, and the whiskey character all in line where we like it. Okay.
So how did a Midwinter's Night Dram actually come about? Are you guys just really big fans of Shakespeare?
That kind of stems back to the original founder, David Perkins. He was a fan of Shakespeare. But really what it comes down to is we love wine finished whiskeys, if done right, if not overpowering or just a big juicy wine bomb, if done right, you get this wonderful interplay of this fruit element. And with port, it's just such a thick and rich, wine, more prune and raisin kind of notes than more grape and cherry kind of notes usually. And so you get to have this really intense, almost kind of a dessert whiskey. And, we launch it in the fall every year. It's meant to be sipped by the fire. Pour it tall and sip it long and slow by the fire because it's a good one for the wintertime.
Right. I think barrel finishes with rye whiskey works really, really well. Not being a huge rye guy, I always thought the barrel finishes, whether it's a port finish or some other variation, I think it blends great with ryes, and especially non-chill filtered ryes like Midwinter's Night Dram. Do you chill filter the majority of your other products, or is there a lot that's not chill filtered?
We don't chill filter anything, actually. And that was a decision we made. Yeah, from day one, that's been something that we stood by ever since we started the company. And the reason for that, really, it's twofold, right? It's that, when you chill filter things, those haze causing compounds that you're filtering out, they actually add a lot to viscosity, mouthfeel, palate weight, the heaviness of the whiskey on your palate. It adds a lot to that. And so we didn't want to take that out. And so instead we went non-chill filtered. And that's also why you'll see that almost all of our whiskeys are at 46% ABV or above. Because once you're in that range, you're a high enough alcohol content where you're not going to really throw any kind of a chill haze under normal circumstances.
Gotcha. The biggest issue facing industry availability as a craft brand, how do you guys deal with that?
With non-chill filtration?
No, just distribution, reaching all the states.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been kind of a long slog, right? And you got to keep in mind that when we started the business back in 2007, the craft industry was just getting going. I mean, really, when we drafted the papers for High West Distillery, there was only about 60 or 70 craft distilleries in the nation.
Oh, wow.
And now what are we up to? We're thousands now, right? I don't know what the latest count is, but there's thousands, all right.
Popping up every day, everywhere.
I know you can't even keep track, right? Oh. So nowadays it's a lot harder, but luckily we were able to kind of get some regional and really, coast to coast fame, or at least, we're talked about in the right circles. And so we acquired some good shelf space early on that we kind of helped us grow, and we could expand in the future. But I can't say, that it was easy. It's tough out there. There's a lot of good whiskeys on the shelf.
Yeah, one thing I've seen in my area is you do a lot of private barrel picks, and you do a lot of different finishes, whether it's a cognac finish. One I had, it was a while back. I believe it was it was the Prairie. God, it's been so long I can't remember.
You do a lot of different ones, yeah.
Right, it was finished in a cognac barrel, and it was like dessert in a glass. What's your barrel pick program like?
It's interesting, right? So, and it's actually evolved quite a bit over the past 18, 24 months here, just because of the success of it. So it's a single barrel program, but we call it a barrel select program. And what it is we take our existing blends, whether it be Rendezvous Rye or Double Rye or American Prairie Bourbon. Most of what we do is American Prairie Bourbon and Double Rye. And we blend that final product, but we slipstream some of it off at a higher proof, and we fill certain select barrels at 4 times during the year. And really, it comes down to myself and my team at High West. We're picking barrels from all over the place. I have a phenomenal quality control a gal who works for me, Tara Lindley, and she actually came with a wine background. So she sources a lot of barrels throughout the year. And what we do is we do about 12 to 24 month finishing in these unique barrels from all around the world that we source. Again, every single one gets nosed. We accept or reject each one based on its nose when it comes in the door. And it provides not only a really interesting kind of unique single barrel program, but it's also an R&D program for us. I mean, Midwinter Night's Dram, Yippee-Ki-Yay, those products really are kind of the first graduating success stories of the Barrel Select program back in the day.
Okay. Yippee-Ki-Yay, is that going to come back?
Well, I'm not going to say never. There's always a chance that there could be some surprise visit down the road. But you know what? We had some hard choices to make. We want to keep on innovating. We want to keep on bringing new products up for our consumers, because I know everyone likes new stuff. We've had a lot of success stories out of Barrel Select program. We want to make room for that in the future. And so at some point, you can't just keep adding and adding. We had to kind of trim down. But there'll be some good stuff coming down the road in its place that you'll be pretty excited for, I think.
So bringing up new stuff. I'm excited to try this. As I told you earlier, I'm not the biggest cocktail maker. I will screw a cocktail up
around for
fast. So you guys recently released 2 bottled cocktails. One's an old fashioned and one's a Manhattan. Before I have you walk me through a pour of these, we could work with either one you want to talk with first and talk me through the drink.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Right. We can pour and sip at the same time. I'll probably start with old fashioned. How about that?
Old fashioned. All right. So should I throw some ice in there?
Absolutely. If you'd like, mine were chilled in the fridge. And so I don't have a cube right here, but I really recommend it any way you like it. The ice is nice because it if you can add a little dilution factor as well. If it's not cold right off the bat. But I usually, for these 2 cocktails specifically, I pretty much don't touch them too much. We did a pretty
so no cherries
job. If you like a nice cherry, absolutely.
I'm going to go the way you do it, but I'm going to use ice. I'm going to avoid the cherry. And you said the old fashioned, huh? All right.
Gosh, we'll start off with that. Yeah. And the unique thing about these are barrel finished cocktails. And so what that means is that we pre-batch, we mix up the cocktail in High West, okay, on a large scale. Then we re-barrel it again for 90 days. And that 90-day maturation allows time for the flavors to marry, some more barrel maturation characteristics to come out, and it really kind of adds some viscosity to the drink as well. And so it's kind of like that finishing touch that we put on our cocktails. Any cocktails we do now or in the future are going to be spirit forward. We're like you, we're spirit guys, right? And so we like to kind of focus on the spirit. We're not going to drown it out with sugary mixers or things like that. And so we have nice spirit forward cocktails.
The one thing I noticed about this, it's definitely a higher ABV than most pre-packaged stuff I've seen. Mm-hmm. This is coming in at what, 47-ish?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep, 43.
43, okay.
43.
I definitely need new glasses. So you pre-mix this. You pre-mix it, and I'm assuming you make your own bitters and all
we don't actually make our own bitters. No, we use Angostura typically, or a blend of orange, and standard Angostura. But we do use the same whiskeys that go into our blends of our finished products, right? And then we source a pretty high quality, if we're using vermouth, like for the Manhattan, we're sourcing a pretty high quality vermouth or blend of vermouths from around the world. That's something new with the Manhattan. I'll talk about in a second. We're sourcing different vermouth for that. But on the old fashioned, it's higher ABV, absolutely. We did that on purpose, right? So it's a little more spirit forward. Also, too, if you're gonna throw some ice in there, the dilution doesn't take it too dilute too quickly. You don't want to have the cocktail get too weak too fast, halfway through there, you want to have some nice little punch to it. So that was definitely by design. And we did a little bit of, assuming that most people may not take the time to do an orange twist in there, which is really classic recipe on this old fashioned is an orange rind twist to get those orange oils in the cocktail. We did a little bit of an orange essence dosing in there, which is a really nice addition.
Okay, so one of the things I noticed on the bottle on the print is you use a bourbon and a rye. Most cocktails I've seen made or I've made myself is usually one or the other. What's the process behind that?
It's all about complexity for us, really. Have you had the Rye before?
Yes.
Yeah, so the Rye was our first kind of venture into the kind of the abnormal blending, if you will, and then it kind of went a whole bunch of different directions, and we can talk about that in a minute. But we just find that when we work in the right bourbon, the right rye, at the right ratios, you just drive more complexity in the cocktail. You get the spiciness from the rye, you get the kind of that sweetness and that kind of field, kind of corn grain sweetness from the bourbon, and you can just really drive more complexity in the cocktail. And same thing in the whiskeys too. That's really the foundation of our blending program. We spend a lot of time and a lot of effort, and a lot of our recipes are quite complex. The blends are very complex because we're just trying to drive, it's about having the most round flavor profile. So you can see and taste so many different things in there, but nothing is sticking out in a huge way and overly dumb.
Right. So I'm just nosing it a little bit, and it smells like a fantastic old fashioned. So I get that orange and all the good stuff that you normally get in an old fashioned. So I'm going to go ahead and have a sip.
And there's Demerara sugar in there as well. And so we used a higher quality sugar. That's not just straight, white processed sugar. We want some of that kind of brown sugar richness to come from the Demerara.
That's a damn fine old fashioned.
Cheers.
Cheers. You definitely do get the alcohol up front. And I like that a lot because I'm a high proof guy. The few mixed drinks I mix at the house, I usually use a barrel proof bourbon or something.
Sure.
And of course it gets diluted down with all the other ingredients because I probably add too much this and too much of that because I'm definitely not a mixologist like Jimmy Z is.
Yeah. I think, my preference is I like to drink the whiskey straight on its own or on the rocks or something like that. But we thought that if we're going to come out, with a pre-batched cocktail, we're going to hit the high note. It's going to be high end. It's going to be classy. It's going to be spirit forward. So,
do you think you'll have other variants of the old fashioned, like different blends or different twists on it?
It's not in the plans right now. We may bring out another one or two offerings to the cocktail lineup in the future. Nothing's in the plans. Nothing's in the warehouse right now, aging. We kind of thought this was a good start. We're going to see how it goes, see how the market takes to it and everything. But, we're probably going to focus a little more on future blends, whiskey blends and things like that.
Now, just out of curiosity, market-wise, is there a specific demographic that you're kind of gearing towards with these type of bottles?
I think it's the demographic that likes to come home from work and have, pre-pandemic, I guess, come home from work, right? But likes to come home from work and enjoy not just, a nice cocktail, but something with very high-end ingredients, spirit-forward cocktail. Maybe they're pretty busy. You're tired, you come home, you don't necessarily want to take the time sourcing the ingredients, mixing up a nice high-quality cocktail yourself. So if we can deliver it at the same kind of recipe that those cocktail aficionados would look for, that's what we're trying to do here. And also that barrel finishing element on it, we really wanted to give the consumer something that they can't really do on their own, right?
I think that barrel finish really, really shines through on this.
It's pretty cool. We actually talked about maybe doing, in normal days, I'll do tastings, around the country and things like that. We had talked about, wouldn't it be cool to do a pre-barrel finish and post-barrel finish cocktail and really show people the difference that you see in that cocktail and what that does for it. It's pretty obvious. It's fun.
All right.
Hey, Brendan, we've got a question from somebody in our Facebook group. They want to know, distribution wise, do you know when the cocktails are going to be available nationwide, particularly in Pennsylvania, things of that nature?
That's a great question. So we had our official launch party. It was about 6 or 8 weeks ago. So we're in the middle of the launch right now, and it's rolling out nationwide right now. I'd be lying if I told you a specific day,
Tomorrow.
Day for the Pennsylvania market. But I can say that we're looking to get them out in the right markets, coast to coast, by December, I'd say. And so
Nice.
we're in the process right now. And if you go to our website, we have like a Find High West. That's regularly updated on the website, and that's probably the best place to start right there. And you can call to make sure that it's available before you go.
Awesome. We will post that for our folks in the group. So basically, in time for the holidays, which would be great for everybody who is going to hopefully have folks around, to enjoy cocktails with.
And a cool thing too is that we're doing the 750 ml version and the 375 ml version, which I have right here. So a nice little to-go version for for a holiday party or something like that.
There you go.
Looks like a good stocking stuffer.
I was about to say a nice little hostess gift,
There you go.
I got this. We can market this. You and me will work together, Brendan.
Absolutely.
So let's go on to your other one. I kind of want to finish this real quick, though.
Sure.
Will you guys be shipping? Will you guys be distributing internationally? As a secondary follow-up to that.
So I don't think international is on the plans right now. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to wait and see what the national demand is first, and then see if we go international. There is a shelf life to these cocktails, right? You've got some, it's a little bit lower ABV, not a lot lower ABV, but you also have, like in the Manhattan, you have wine in there, which oxidizes faster than whiskey. And so there is a shelf life we want to be conscious of. And we're doing shelf life trials right now to see like really what that is. It's not so much when it's unopened, it's when it's after it's opened. And so once you open the cocktail, we recommend you store it in the fridge and you drink it within about 30 days, but I don't think that'll be a problem.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So we have the other bottle, which is the Manhattan.
That's right. So this Manhattan now, some of our, really observant fans out there will probably say, hey, what about the 36th vote? Because we already had a barrel-aged Manhattan that's been out for a little while now, and it was called the 36th vote. And this is basically kind of like a reblend, relaunch of the 36th vote, and kind of making a statement saying we want to be in the the high-end cocktail market. So let's take a new take on the barrel-aged Manhattan. Let's introduce the old-fashioned with it and give kind of a set out there for people to get into. So the difference is between the 36th vote and this new barrel-aged Manhattan here. The main difference really is the vermouth sourcing. Now we couldn't grow much at all with our current vermouth sourcer, with our current vermouth provider for the 36th vote. Very, very small winery, just didn't have a lot to go around. And so what we did is we actually went to 2 different providers, and we have both a U.S. source vermouth and an Italian vermouth going into it now, which was great, for 2 reasons. One, it allowed us to, kind of reach, coast to coast and get this out to the nation. But the bigger reason I'd say is that it gave us, again, more complexity in the cocktail. We get this nice savory note out of the Italian vermouth that goes really, really well with the more fruity vermouth that we source in the States. And so we get to drive more complexity in the cocktail and have a really rich, robust profile. Same thing, a blend of bourbon and rye as the base in here. 2/3 whiskey, 1/3 vermouth, which is kind of a traditional mix that you'll see.
Okay. Now, should I drink this cold or?
I typically do. Yep. Yeah, I typically.
Yep. Well, grab some more ice over here. I'm kind of ready with the ice.
Yep.
All right. So Manhattan, kind of embarrassingly enough to say, this is my first Manhattan.
Ever?
Don't tell anybody.
Oh my goodness.
Chad, we've just told 40,000 people.
Well, I feel thrilled that it's ours.
Nobody tell anybody this is my first.
Everybody hush.
So.
And one of our members says, so it is sweet vermouth, correct, Brendan?
It is, yeah. Both of the vermouths that go into it are sweet vermouth.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.
We experimented with that too. We experimented with the quote unquote perfect Manhattan where you have sweet and dry in there. Really, just on all the blinded trials, we just thought that the straight up original recipe stood out the best.
Of course. I mean, why mess with the classic?
That's right. Yeah. So you get those wine notes in there now, right? You get more of that kind of black cherry note coming behind the whiskey.
Yeah, it's definitely a darker appearance.
Yeah.
And it's heavier on the nose.
Yep, and those vermouths will also kind of add that more dried herbal character. We definitely didn't want to have too fruity of vermouths. We want to have some more spice and herbal notes coming out of the vermouths as well. So you'll probably notice that.
That's kind of cool.
Fun, huh?
Brendan, you might have converted the Chadman, as he's known affectionately among us all.
Just trying to broaden your horizons, Chad.
Hey, you can always teach an old dog new tricks. Don't believe the rumors.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we thought they were kind of a fun addition to our lineup, and we'll kind of, if people are into it, maybe we'll keep expanding on it in the future. We'll see.
This is a really delicious drink.
I thought it's more forward.
Yes, I mean, it has this tartness to it that I'm finding very, very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I can't believe I've never had a Manhattan.
I will tell you, Brendan, I've known Chad for a while, and this is genuine shock on his face.
Excellent.
It has a thickness to it. Where does it get that from? Is that the vermouth or?
More on the vermouth side, yeah.
Okay.
Vermouth's a fortified wine. These are also aged vermouths in the barrel, and so you have a viscosity that comes both from the vermouth and that secondary barrel finishing as well.
Yeah, almost has that dark chocolate characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a very fair comparison,
Sure,
but that tartness that like just hangs up there in the very back of your throat, with a really dark chocolate.
Listen, I'm a fan of the classic cocktails. I'm a gin martini girl straight up, but I enjoy a good old fashioned, literally and figuratively. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm not comparing one or the other, but Christmas is coming, Tasha. You could send me one.
Yay!
No, you could send me one.
Oh, sorry. Where was my head on that?
Right, come on, Tasha, come on. These are for a cocktail novice, and I will chalk that up. I am a very big cocktail novice. These are very delicious. The Manhattan just kind of makes me smile. I mean, seriously, like I really, really dig that, Brendan. I think you guys knocked it out of the park with these two bottles.
Excellent, great, thanks very much.
I think it's going to be a hit.
So far, so good. When we had a successful launch at our distilleries in Utah here, we very much underestimated the initial bottling run and launch. We sold very, very quickly. And so we're correcting that and getting more in the hopper.
All right. This Manhattan, I'm probably going to chill out with the wife later on and bring that with me.
So Brendan, are there any we've got the classics, the Manhattan and the old fashioned. Are there any other things that you guys are thinking about putting out in terms of in this like pre-made, ready mix, make everything easy?
There's been, like we've talked about, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do a Sazerac, a classic Sazerac cocktail? That'd be fun.
Okay. Maybe a whiskey sour, maybe throw one of those in there.
Yeah, that's not to get too geeky, but whiskey sours are tough. Once you start adding like some serious in there, that ages a little differently. So,
yep.
The scientist in my head kind of wants to be careful with that one.
Be careful. Yeah. Be super careful with things like that. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure.
But yeah, we've tossed around a couple ideas. Nothing on the plans right now. We'll let this, kind of settle for a little bit and see how it goes.
Now, what about the idea of like little kits? I mean, you're welcome. Because obviously when we were talking earlier, Chad was devoid of a classic orange peel or twist, like recipes to go along with it. I don't know. Obviously, I don't have the bottles in front of me, so I'm not sure. But saying, hey, best served with. I mean, obviously, chill them. They'd be amazing. But
absolutely, and we actually have that. We have that on the 750s, I believe. There's kind of like a 1, 2, 3 step process on the 750s, and we recommend a cherry with the old fashioned, or excuse me, a cherry with the Manhattan, and then a lemon and orange rind with the old fashioned.
Perfect. That's awesome.
All right.
Good to know. Again, I haven't seen the bottles. They look delightful. I would keep them on my bar, Chad, at Christmas.
Tasha, Christmas.
It was kind of like the classic, kind of medicine, like apothecary kind of medicine bottle.
That's what I was actually really admiring. The old school wax stamp. It looks like the old medicine bottles.
Yep, that was the idea.
I really like it. So, Brendan, I'll tell you what, everything you guys are doing out there in High West has been home runs. I look forward to seeing more of your product and learning more about your whiskeys and these pre-made cocktails. You say they're basically nationwide or going to be nationwide here shortly.
Yeah, they're in the process right now.
All right. I'll tell you what.
Yep.
Get that Manhattan and then remember Christmas right around the corner, Tasha.
All right, I got you, honey. Don't worry.
So, hey, Brandon, I want to raise my glass to you guys and thank you. And say cheers to High West.
Cheers.
All right, WBSE, go pick that stuff up because it's delicious, especially this Manhattan.
There you go.
Cheers, WBSE.
Bye, guys.